So here's my take on this. I have seen this, and he put out a tweet where he basically says, "Hey, we are designing these avatars to help raise the birth rate." Okay, so one of Elon's big issues is that Elon recognizes that there's a population collapse coming, which I actually tend to agree with as well. The birth rates are declining across the West.
Welcome into another episode of the Under God Podcast. My name is Nathan. I am here with Daniel Hayworth, and we've got your Friday culture review. Daniel's got some crazy stuff to talk about today. Some more interesting than Daniel.
Is just as interesting.
I'm just like looking over your notes. I'm like, what are we getting into here?
Pastor Nate just doesn't want to talk about Taylor Swift.
Why do I want to talk about?
I'm going to make
Swift?
it because it cares about called just the politics review. It's called the culture review.
Cultural review. I guess she's big in culture.
She is a big cultural maker.
And
you have to talk about
and also,
and I thought it'd be funny to make
one of our guys around here is a big Kansas City fan. He's not here to defend himself, so we could talk some smack about Travis Kelce or however you say it.
Actively. Yeah.
Anyways, it's good to see you. It's good to see you today. What have you been doing today? What you been up to?
Absolutely nothing. I actually just sit around and wait for us to film this podcast.
Just wait
every week.
Yeah.
I live here.
He's got an Xbox in his office, no computer. He's just gaming all day. What do you play at your age?
What do I play at my age?
Yeah, your age.
At the ripe age of 28 years old.
Yeah, you shouldn't have told people that. Grow the beard back, and then you look over 30. I tried to tell you.
I don't know until I do get asked a lot how old.
What is it, like World of Warcraft, or I don't even know what game. I'm trying to
actually play. I don't actually play anything, so
you don't play video games.
No.
All right, well then you've been redeemed through that, so that's good. Yeah.
I no, not really.
No video games.
I sometimes have my kids try and play because I thought it'd be fun, but they're not really old enough to understand it yet, and so.
Yeah.
No, it's just VeggieTales for them.
Just VeggieTales.
Yeah. There's a good show they like called Storybook too, which is pretty
bad. The
VeggieTales
guy went so woke, man.
Phil Fisher. Yeah, he went super woke. I literally see him on Twitter now, and I'm like, this guy's the bad guy.
He is I'm like, I used to Phil Fisher. My older kids. Yeah, I got a kid almost your age. Like he grew up on VeggieTales.
Yeah, I did. I grew up on VeggieTales. It was big. I was a early 2000s church kid, so VeggieTales was an integral part of my childhood. Yeah, and now I like to casually get in Twitter fights with everyone that's on Phil Fisher's side. So
what happened to him?
I mean, I think he just believed a lot of the same things that many people in big EVA, right? Big church. I don't even know if I like using that term. Big churches in America started to believe, which was that the gospel was going to be substituted with this sort of general niceness. And this early 2000s version of conservatism, which actually wasn't what original conservatism was. We're actually closer to that now, right? I mean, we're like Barry Goldwater conservatism was not George Bush conservatism and all that.
Compassionate conservatism.
All of this sort of nice guy, like we're just going to try and make everybody get along. Sort of trending towards, but not quite at the coexist bumper sticker we talked about before, sort of mentality. And so all of these issues where we started categorizing biblical topics as political, those guys bowed out of and said it wasn't meant to be discussed. And now they've come down on the other side because the friends that they've made, the relationships that they've built, the careers that they've had have all been intertwined. Yeah, the pastors they've listened to have all been intertwined on this other side. It's not an uncommon story, but that's largely what it appears has happened.
It's so disappointing. Like, I'm a little bit older than you, but I graduated high school in the mid '90s, and a lot of these like Christian musicians from back in the day, they're all like atheists.
Well, music is a little bit different, in my opinion, because I've actually long held the view that most Christian musicians are very, 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 very light on their theology and their actual tangible. And not that people can't fall or any of those things happen. But in the music industry, a lot of people, I think from the get-go, are just trying to make a name for themselves. Yeah. If they fall into the Christian lane because they have kind of one hit, they end up following that trail, even if their faith isn't the largest thing for them. And I think you've seen that story kind of repeat over and over again.
Over and over again. Yeah, it's unfortunate people do that. I tell you what, even the modern music, it's like, so none of this is in the notes. We're just hanging out, having fun here on the Under God Podcast. But it's like, even like in our churches, in my church, in your church, I feel like mostly we sing songs written by like 4 or 5 churches. That's about it. It's honestly,
and a lot of the churches have pretty major theological problems.
I mean, maybe some of them do, but some of it works its way out. I think like the more you talk about Jesus in your songs and the less you talk about you, the better. I mean, it's pretty good. But it's making me honestly, like in all my free time between trying to help get a church leadership college going and doing the podcast and leading a church and all that, all my free time, I kind of want to start writing music again. Like I've got a little thing.
You have a good voice, yeah.
Well, who cares who sings it? But like just because it's like, I don't know who said it, but somebody said, "Show me your songs and I'll show you your theology." I do just feel like we need a more, I don't know. I miss the days of like Matt Redman, who really cared about theology when he wrote songs. He still does write songs. But then I also think about like the culture, like Pastor Stephen and I, we were recording an episode. Well, you've done some of them. We've been talking about kingdom culture, but you think about the culture of your church, like how can we express that in music, in song? And so I think we're maybe missing some opportunities. So anyway, Daniel, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I actually at some point I'll start doing that again.
My mother-in-law has a really funny saying, which she taught to my wife, who has now passed it on to me, which is that you shouldn't walk into a church and not be able to tell if it's a worship song or a love song. She goes, "You should not want Jesus is my boyfriend songs." I love that. I think about that all the time. There's a lot of songs we sing that are Jesus is my boyfriend. And it's like, well, Jesus is not your boyfriend. He's not your homeboy. He's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and that's a different relationship. And he asks you to come to his throne boldly, but he doesn't ask you to diminish who he is in your life, right? You're so beautiful.
So true. So anyway, I don't know. That's first 5 minutes down. We're just talking about
he's just trying to procrastinate so that we don't start to procrastinate.
Yeah. The longer we go, maybe we won't have to talk about Taylor Swift, because who cares? I know like millions of people care. I was with my wife.
Lady, if this episode is for you, just listen long enough. Listen long enough. Pastor Nate's take on Taylor Swift.
We'll get to it. Yeah, I was hanging out with my wife yesterday. It was her birthday, and so kind of spent the afternoon just trying to spoil her a little bit. And then somebody texted her and said, "How dare Taylor Swift get engaged on your birthday?" And so we even at our birthday lunch, just me and my wife, we were forced to talk about it. So anyways, set that aside.
Let's talk about burning the flag. That's what I want to talk about right now.
Who likes to burn American flags? I've never understood.
Communists?
I'm like, why burn it? And it's like, I always notice like there is people who are in our country that hate our country, and they express their hate for our country by burning our country's flag. I'm not anti-immigration at all. I'm really not. We can talk about that, but I'm like, why would you come here?
I'm a little
and then talk about how much you hate this country and then start burning flags. I know you're farther right than people think I'm right. I'm not really. I'm like a moderate compared to you.
I'm not anti all immigration.
I did wear my.
I'm just like
shirt. Yeah, you like this dark maggot, baby.
Make him. I love that. Yeah.
Could you get that, Mr. Producer? That's
the make America great
again.
In case people are unsure who Pastor Nate voted for, it was Kamala.
Probably not. I will admit though, in humility, I didn't vote for Trump the first time, and I didn't vote for the other.
Shows I have better instincts than you. I was only 18
running against him, but I was like, I don't know about this guy. And then probably about 6 months into it, I felt bad about that. And he didn't just earn my vote; he earned my enthusiasm the second time around. I don't think he's perfect.
No, I don't either.
And I'm not sure what I think. Actually, I've got some mixed feelings about this executive order about flag burning. I mean, I kind of, you've always heard about desecration of a venerated object, and you're not supposed to do that. And we try to handle the flag with care. Even our house, it starts to get a little rip, and I'm feeling like, oh shoot, I better change that thing. I don't want a ripped flag flying up there and looking bad. But tell us about the executive order.
So
a little bit. More.
I will get into this really quick, but I just want to make a quick note that Pastor Nate is so old. He's voted for a lot of different people for president. I'm so old that I've only ever voted for Donald Trump because he's been the nominee every single time. I've been old.
Daniel, listen to me very clearly. Grow the beard back out. Do yourself a favor.
Anyway, hey, I probably just lost some people.
If you like his beard, if you like him smooth face, don't say anything. I don't need.
My wife will go if we get 50 votes for the beard. I'll tell her I have to grow it out for another month.
Does she tell you to shave it? I don't believe it.
No, she didn't tell me to shave it.
No, because she wants you to look distinguished, and the beard helps you look distinguished.
Yeah, the beard did. What happened was we went and played golf, and I decided I was really over it because it was like 100 degrees outside and it got itchy, and I decided
I get used to that. That goes away. You just have to get through the.
It wasn't fun for me anymore.
Anyways, let's talk about flag burner. What's that?
So this week, Donald Trump issued an executive order that directs the Department of Justice to treat burning the American flag as an act that can be prosecuted specifically as incitement to violence, riot, or property destruction. And so a couple of things to clear up.
Sounds pretty intense.
Trump, when he made the announcement, obviously makes a little bit of a summary of what the order says. The order actually tries to stay in the legal realm of what is called Texas v. Johnson. And so here's the background on Texas versus Johnson.
Educate me.
Texas v. Johnson is Scalia's greatest mistake on the Supreme Court.
Okay.
So, in 1989,
Bold statement.
Texas v. Johnson had a case that held that burning the American flag was a protected symbolic speech, right? And so this is a Supreme Court ruling. Now, I want to make a couple points about this ruling. First and foremost, everyone who's sort of a liberal or like a liberal pretending to not be a liberal is like, well, you guys disagree with Antonin Scalia. I just want to make note, Antonin Scalia is a great man. He's one of the great Supreme Court justices of our lifetime. But in this case, he was siding with the 4 liberal justices of the court. And by the way, that means he's siding with the people who would go on to author Obergefell. He's siding with the people who had already authored Roe versus Wade. He's siding with that wing in this decision. And the Chief Justice of the court, Justice Rehnquist at the time, one of, if not the most conservative Supreme Court justice that we've had in the last 100 years, was the one who wrote the dissent against this ruling. And so the idea that it's anti-conservative or not the traditional conservative view that you are not allowed to burn the American flag, that's actually not true. And by the way, 48 of the 50 states had laws that opposed this up until the ruling in 1989. So for the first 200 years of the country, everyone had laws that said you cannot go out and actively burn the American flag. Trump's executive order basically says, hey, because of what we've seen, we understand that the burning of the American flag largely is an incitement to violence, right? Because you're taking a stance against the country that leads into these violent riots that we've seen over and over.
And I don't like seeing that.
Yeah, and nobody likes seeing that. And so I think what's really happening here is I think President Trump is making a completely legal executive order. His order is very well worded. He has great lawyers on his team who've made sure that it's very well worded. Yeah. But I think my opinion is he's largely trying to bait people into going out and burning American flags and inciting to riot or violence or property destruction, all of these things. And he's basically baiting these people who go in these mass riot in these cities into doing things that they can arrest them for and help get them off the streets. I think it's politically extremely savvy. What I also think is that the conservative position, and this is my opinion, I would love to hear yours, Pastor Nate, I actually believe that Texas versus Johnson is wrong. I believe Texas v. Johnson is a wrongly ruled case. I believe the conservatives on the court were right in that case. I believe that Scalia, great man though he was, not all men are perfect and men are not angels, right? And so he made an error in this ruling. I think that the American flag is a symbol of the nation. And it's not just a symbol of one faction of the nation. It's supposed to be the unifying symbol of the nation. We should have laws that rule it out. And to say that it's unconstitutional to have laws that ban the burning of the American flag, I don't believe that that's anywhere in the Constitution, because final point on this, and I'll hear what you have to say, Pastor Nate. This is actually a Marxist tactic. Marxists will say speech is violence. That's one of the things that they like to say now.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. Speech is violence. Well, we both know, because we know English, speech is not violence. Speech is speech.
Yeah.
Okay, well, burning an American flag is a physical act. It's not actually speech, right? It's not speech.
Yeah, so I mean, that's part of the question.
Changing words, and they're doing all these things to basically say that. The conservatives, I think, got it right in this case. I think that the liberals plus Scalia did not get it right. I think this EO is a good thing. I think the country should hold the flag as a unifying symbol. I think it should be taken off the playing field as this thing that a bunch of people go out in the streets, they burn the flag. I think everyone should be able to publicly recognize that that's not okay. It's only become popularized because of this ruling in the first place. Now you see it all the time. I think if we stopped that, a lot of the divisive symbology that we see on the streets would go away. That's my take on the EO and all those things. Now I'm just going to let you talk.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with our producer before the show. We were just kind of kicking it around, and the challenge for me, I feel like I could argue both sides. First of all,
yeah, I mean, I'm sure you know.
Yeah, I see both sides of this. I do think freedom of speech is a really big deal. Now, the first question to answer, of course, is what does speech extend to that's not speech?
Yeah,
you know, and so you see this a lot with. I mean, I'll use something else where I would love to see greater restrictions on like pornographic material online.
Yeah.
And yet there's a lot of counter arguments that it's it's for freedom of speech, freedom of expression. I can put whatever I want out there. It's your job to decide what you want to see or not see. And of course, I fall on the side of we should stop that stuff. I actually wish we would ban explicit material in public view.
Licentiousness laws have been on the books of the country until like the last 50 years. So it's not an actual tenet of the Constitution that you should be able to plaster like nude photos of women.
No, I agree, but I'm explaining why I fall on both sides of this, because on one hand, I don't think that freedom of speech means you can literally do whatever you want to do and have no consequence. Like, I don't believe that, and I do think that there are things that some people look at and consider free speech, and they want to shut it down. And I do think where freedom of speech becomes really crucial to remain protected is particularly around political speech.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people, Daniel, that don't like the stuff that we say on this podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, and all we have to do is drive a few hours up to Canada, and we could get arrested for some of the things we say on this podcast. We could hop the pond and go over to England and get arrested for things that we say on this podcast.
Yeah.
And that is a bridge too far.
Sure, but
it's literally speech.
But that's speech. That's not.
I know it's literally speech, but freedom of speech, freedom of expression.
Yeah.
How do you express what you say to people who, if they lack the ability to actually speak, do they still have a protected way to express their thoughts and feelings about things? And so that comes out in writing, that comes out in action that doesn't harm other people.
Yeah, but you are not directly allowed to call for direct acts of violence. That is an assignment to violence. And assignment to riot.
I think here's what I'm trying to say.
This is basically what this EO does, is it basically just says, hey, the only reason that people go in public and they burn flags is to incite other people to take violent action, and that's illegal, and we're going to prosecute it.
So if that's true, I agree with you. And I'm sort of tongue-in-cheek wore my MAGA shirt today because I'm probably like 55% against this EO and about 45% in favor of it.
Yeah.
Now, but here's the thing. I'm just going to be like really honest. I hate seeing people burn the flag.
Yeah.
Like when people burn the American flag, I have a visceral reaction inside of me, and it does make me want to get violent. And so there's an element of it might incite violence for.
So this is a fun fact. Do you want to know a fun legal fact?
Sure, let's go.
Have you ever heard of fighting words? Have you ever heard somebody say those are fighting words?
Yes.
Do you know that that's actually a legal term?
I didn't know that.
That is a legal term. So fighting words has really fallen out of our modern vernacular and our modern legal system. There used to be laws on the books against what were called fighting words, which are essentially words that you are intentionally speaking to other people in order to stir up violent conflict, right? So similar to incitement to violence, incitement to riot. But if you come in and you like, I came in and I say, hey, Pastor Nate, your mother's a, you know what? And so somebody could say, hey, those are like, you're stirring up violence. Like, yeah, those are fighting words. Those are fighting words, right? And that's sort of the context there. And people would say, hey, you are disturbing the public peace. You're inciting violence in public. That's not protected. That's not allowed. And so we're going to haul you off for...
Is that still in the books? Or
so there's more complex legal history behind it, but what it's really morphed into is it's fallen away, and it's given way to later decisions that are involving incitement speech.
Well, here's all I'm going to say. I really feel like I could argue both sides. So to argue the pro side, I mean, I think that first of all, burning a flag is not speech in and of itself. So I don't know that it should be protected as freedom of speech. Also, like, this is the country that we live in. Have a little respect, show a little honor. And there are probably some things that you shouldn't do. I mean, people were like in effigy, like hanging Trump. I mean, of course, we did that to King George in 1775, hanging King George in effigy. And that was part of what, started the revolution. I mean, some of this kind of stuff. So I do think, you could as a country just decide, hey, you can't burn our flag. That doesn't mean you have to wave it in front of your house. Doesn't mean you have to celebrate it. Doesn't mean you have to venerate it. You just can't.
You're not compelling any kind of speech. You're just saying you can't burn things in public that are the symbol of national unity. We have to law against that. I don't think there's a constitutionally protected right to burn the flag, and so I think it's okay for states at the individual level to have laws against it. And I think that in the way that it's largely being used in our culture, where people go into the streets in Los Angeles and people from other countries, they bring it, they literally burn it in the street. Why? Because there's part of a riot. And so that,
well, I don't like it. And I agree it normally, that it does tend to incite violence. I think even what you said, which was like, it's a savvy political move, a little bit like undermines the genuineness of the concern. But anyway, it's kind of interesting. I mean, we could get into scripture here. At the end of the day, we got to pray for those who are in charge, pray for our president, pray for our country. I do not like flag burning. I do a little bit. This is probably why I'm 55-45. Because I think if we're going to err, I would rather err on the side of protecting free speech. We're one of the only countries left where there really is free speech.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I am so crucial that we protect that at all costs. And I think that's why, like, push comes to shove, I'd say, all right, if you feel like you got to burn a flag to get your point across, I don't think you should go to prison for doing that.
I'm on the other.
What are the penalties in this?
It's a year in jail, 1 year in jail, no more.
I would say it's extreme. So maybe a fine, and also like I heard you can maybe fill me in because I haven't read about this. I just heard about it. If you're not a citizen of the United States and you're here burning the flag, I could actually see putting a little stronger.
Well, if you're not a citizen, you get arrested, and we find out you're not a citizen, and we found out because you're not burning the flag. I think that's kind of the whole point of the order.
Is that why he's doing it?
I think that's a big part of it.
Another way.
It's another way to draw people out. Yeah, it's a bait. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, it's a bait. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, on one hand, again, I'm all for anything that would stop people from desecrating an American flag, especially people who hate our country, especially people who come to our country just to hate on our country more. There's so much there's so much hypocrisy in all of that that makes me want to be for it. But I do want to err on the side of free speech. That's just me. I just think it's worth protecting because I want to say some stuff that people wish I would go to jail for saying.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I disagree with you about whether or not it's speech, and I think that's where fundamentally our disagreement there comes. I don't believe it's speech to go burning the flag.
Clear. I'm not sure. I'm a little like I am riding the fence.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just I don't know if I'm ready to say you're right either.
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
Yeah,
you heard it here first.
What else you want to talk about? Something about Elon Musk and porn bots or something?
Okay, yeah. So this is
I know nothing about
this. Is a one that I put in here because I wanted to talk about this. So I don't know. Are you on X, Pastor Nate? Do you
Very little.
All right, yeah.
I'm on X. Yes.
Well, hey, I didn't know.
You don't follow me?
No.
Well, you're missing out on some good content.
You have some good content?
Yeah.
All right, I'll follow you on X.
It's fine.
Producer Nick, remind me to follow Pastor Nate on X after this episode.
I do a lot on X, but
so on X, which is obviously formerly Twitter, Elon Musk is the owner of that. He has his version of, we're in the middle of the AI race right now, and Elon has his version of AI called Grok. And so Grok recently introduced this idea of avatars. And so Grok is really working right now to create what Elon calls AGI. And he had a tweet out earlier this week, a post. He had a post out earlier this week saying, I believe that Grok 5 could end up being his new version of Grok, end up being AGI. AGI is artificial general intelligence. And he is wanting to integrate every higher evolution of Grok, his artificial intelligence platform, into these avatars. He's also wanting to do it into video generation, and so they launched this thing called Grok Imagine this week, which is not super different from some of the other stuff you've seen. Google has a version of this called Veo that's hyper-realistic and all of these things. But what I think was interesting about this is Elon is specifically, and I used to use Grok. I do not use Grok anymore. I used to use Grok for research. I thought it was honestly better than ChatGPT in a lot of ways. Because I thought, hey, I can get real links real time. It's a lot more up to date than ChatGPT has been historically, like it has newer information. And so I liked it for those reasons. So we do a lot of stuff that involves research. And so I loved Grok for that. I don't use Grok anymore because he launched these avatars and they're very promiscuous and they're all of these things. And he's very intentionally coding them this way. And he talked about it pretty publicly.
Hang on a second. Yeah. So let me just stop for a second. When you say avatar, like I'm thinking about, the movie Avatar.
No, he's talking.
Are we talking about
physical, like animated characters,
right? But
they will talk to you and do all of these things.
Are those designed to be extensions of real human beings, or they're strictly AI?
No, they are AI. Like you go have a conversation with. So there's there's a boy one called Valentine and a girl one called Annie, and then he has more innocent ones. I think like there's a fox, right, and all this stuff.
Valentine and Annie are not innocent.
And no, Valentine and Annie are anything but innocent. Okay. And it's very disturbing, honestly. And so there's a little bit of an uproar on X because
I don't know anything about it.
I got on my X feed and like I follow Elon Musk, right? I don't follow anything crazy or promiscuous on X, but Elon's like posting these avatars and I'm like, I don't want that on my page, right? I don't want to see that. I don't want anything to do with that. Like, don't show me this again, right? Like all of those things.
Yeah.
But he's like posting all of this stuff because he's super proud of his.
To what end? What's the point? What's he trying to do?
So here's my take on this. I have seen this, and he put out a tweet where he basically says, "Hey, we are designing these avatars to help raise the birth rate." Okay, so one of Elon's big issues is that Elon recognizes that there's a population collapse coming, which I actually tend to agree with as well. The birth rates are declining across the West.
Especially here?
It's hard to fix, yeah, especially here. South Korea is actually the worst in the world.
But we're doing our part.
Yeah, I'm doing my part. Yeah, hey, look, 4 kids in 4 years. All right, beat that.
I admire your bravery. I question your judgment. Yeah.
Yeah. So, me and Maddie, we're doing our part. But the thing that Elon recognizes is he's worried about what he calls the light of consciousness being extinguished. That's why he wants to send us to Mars so that we can preserve the light of consciousness. He also wants us to have more babies. That's why he has like 13 kids, right? Because he wants to essentially keep the species going. And he's basically saying, I'm programming these avatars to, they're not this point yet, but I think they're going to basically being porn bots, right? And he's saying,
how does that help people procreate?
Yeah, so this is what a lot of the conservatives got online and said, this is going to make the birth rate problem worse. And he says, no, we're working on programming it so that it will actually, make people go out and have more kids. And I'm thinking, well, I don't actually agree that that's going to happen. But what I think is interesting.
This sounds insane.
Yeah, it is insane. So what I actually think about is interesting is you put this all together. Elon's the most rich man in the entire world.
The most rich man.
He's the richest man in the entire world. Yeah, thank you, Pastor Nate, grammar teacher. Come on, man. It's like Elon's the richest man in the entire world. He owns a spaceship company. He owns a self-driving car company, which is Tesla. It's an electric car company, self-driving car company. He's trying to automate the future. And he owns this artificial intelligence company. And he believes that the artificial intelligence company is going to be integral to the future of humanity. He also has this comment that he's made several years ago, and then he made it again a couple of months ago, where he says, I believe that humanity is clearly just a digital bootloader for digital superintelligence, meaning we're just basically the people that are going to plug it in, and then we're going to evolve into the next thing, and it's going to be digital, it's going to be AI. That's his worldview. And so I think that's extremely interesting, because this is the most wealthy person in the entire world who has all these companies. He's trying to take us to Mars. He's trying to do all these things. He's done some great things for free speech, but he's trying to use these porn bots and other things to artificially raise the birth rate. All of this, why?
Well, because real people get married,
yeah,
and then procreate. I mean, it's not that. It's not that hard.
It's not that hard. No,
I have to spell this out here.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, we're not going to go into it. We have young listeners, but I will say this is actually not a unique worldview to Elon. This is the transhumanistic worldview that has existed since the Tower of Babel. And you and I have talked about that before, right? And it shows up in the garden in Genesis 3, where the devil comes and he says, hey, God doesn't want that for you, because he knows that if you eat that fruit, you will be like him. You will be like God. In other words, he's tempting them and saying, no, all you have to do is reach out and take godhood upon yourselves. And then they try to do this again at Babel. They try and build this tower. Why? To make a name for themselves. And what that really means is they're trying not just to do it and everybody say, hey, great job, sport. That's what we say is
they're trying
for ourselves
on their terms, or maybe trying to be God. Some combination thereof.
Some combination thereof, where they're trying to transcend who God has made us to be. And here's my point about this. And actually, I have a piece coming out later this week about this very topic.
Where can people find that?
Humanevents.com.
All right. Hey, let's link that in the show notes, that article, so I can read it, because I want to catch up on this topic a little bit.
It'll detail the thread here pretty well, but basically what I see this as is I see us trying to transcend our humanity, but that's at the expense of something else. Because the greatest gift that God gives us inherently as people is what? That we are made
in his image.
Sure. And the blessing that we have that no other creation has is that we are made in the Imago Dei. We are sons and daughters of God only because we are made in his image and we're redeemed through Christ, and all of that happens. Yeah. But that can't happen if we're not made in God's image, right? If we're not made in God's image, then we can't be his children, right? My children can actually only be made in
Well, it actually makes me think about, one of my favorite topics to talk about is divine rebellion. It makes me think about Genesis 6, where the sons of God came and, you're dealing with divine rebels who somehow, I don't understand it all, but they've managed to procreate with human beings. But what I think they're doing is in the beginning of Genesis, God says, let us make man in our image. In Genesis 6, his opposition says, no, we're going to remake man in our image. And that's a little bit what this feels like, is sort of a digital continuation of a divine rebellion that traces.
This is exactly what
thousands or millions of years.
I believe
how you
it's a continuation of the rebellion that happens when we try to replace God with ourselves and try and transcend the greatest thing that we are, which is to be made in his image. And so I see this all as Elon's worldview. But the reason I bring this up is I actually think that Elon's a very popular figure. He's a very influential figure, obviously. What's happening here, I think, is Elon is leading people in a worldview of transhumanism. And I want to warn our people against that, right? Like,
Yeah.
we are not meant to transcend humanity. We're not meant to do those things. We are meant to embrace God's image
Well, I mean,
in us.
yeah. So N.T. Wright in his book "Surprised by Hope," he sort of talks about. I love that book. I don't agree with him on everything, but that book is phenomenal. But one of the things he talks about is that the degree to which you are fully human is the degree to which you rightly image God.
That's right. This is exactly my take on this.
Yeah, and so that's what actually makes you. There is no transcending that. There's just becoming more and more human. The more now he uses it to postulate an interesting theory. I don't know if he fully. He sort of goes. He's on the fence about hell itself. But I mean, and there's a lot of people who would say. I mean, even John MacArthur, I heard him say that when you die, one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to be in the presence of God forever, or you're never going to be in the presence of God again.
Yeah,
and that's ultimately what hell is. I mean, we got a lot of ideas and theories about hell, but what we know for sure, beyond any shadow of a doubt, it is you are no longer in the presence of God. N.T. Wright postulates that you actually part of the reason people are like, how could God torment humans? He actually says one of the things that may happen is you may actually devolve into no longer being human.
Yeah.
Because what makes you human is your ability to reflect the image of God. And right now, while you're on the earth, waking up, living and breathing, you've got a common grace on you that all of us still image God in some ways, some more so than others.
Yeah.
But basically the dividing line, I'm just going in a tangent here to try to theologically wrap my mind around this too. Yeah, but ultimately, you will, in the redeemed world, in the restoration of all things, in the resurrection, that we will, in our new bodies, we will fully image God the way that he intended in full. And we will actually be sort of the ultimate human, not transhuman, but the ultimate human, which is what we get a picture of Jesus in the resurrection. And that those who are in hell, whatever that is, and maybe we'll do a podcast on heaven and hell someday.
Yeah, that'll be a good one.
Talk about the theories. Put that one on the list, Mr. Producer. Let's talk about heaven and hell. But what he would say is whatever hell is, and it may be a place of eternal torment, torture, whatever, but it's also a place where beings that used to be human are no longer human at all anymore because they cannot even access the presence of God.
Yeah.
Thereby, they can't reflect his nature. I'm not saying today whether or not I agree with that, but that is an interesting theological idea that does have some merit. And what you're talking about really does lend itself to that line of thinking.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, what you talk about really comes down to this. Are you going to embrace God's image upon you, or are you going to run from it? And what happens when you run from it is just what you said. You actually do devolve, right? C.S. Lewis said it like this. He said, hey, either you're the closest to hell you're ever going to be, or you're the closest to heaven you're ever going to be.
Yeah.
And the only distinguishing factor is whether or not you embrace Christ, whether or not you embrace God's plan for your life, whether or not you embrace eternity. And by the way, embracing eternity in the Christian life, knowing that you have Christ and he leads you into an eternal salvific life where you're in the presence of God, that is the thing that people who are like Elon and they have this transhumanist worldview, they're seeking. They're seeking an eternal
that's eternity
life.
written on their heart. Right. They're trying to find their other way to get there. Yeah,
it's
crazy.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's interesting. We'll have to come back and do an afterlife episode sometime.
That'd be good.
Kind of talk about the different theories out there. What's this third thing?
All right, Pastor Nate, we're going to talk about, that one's a little bit deeper. So now we're going to talk about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are engaged. All right, so here's why I care. All right, I will say.
Tell me why I should care about.
Here's why I think we should care.
I need Phil Vischer.
I don't think we need to spend a lot of time thinking about this. And for what it's worth, I largely know nothing about either of these people, except for Taylor Swift is inarguably one of the largest cultural figures of the last 50 years.
She's pretty big.
Yeah, she's the
pretty big deal.
The number one touring artist of all time ever. Most money, most tickets sold, most
is she a billionaire?
Albums sold. She's the first music billionaire. Yeah, so she's a huge cultural figure. She's been on the scene for 20 plus years. And
I like her early stuff.
Well, her brand started country, then it went pop, but she's always been writing these heartbreak songs, whatever. I don't even know that I could name.
The country music was good. I don't know about everything else.
I don't know. I don't listen to Taylor Swift. But what I think it matters is Taylor Swift's kind of a lib, right? She's kind of liberal. Yeah, pretty huge liberal. But what she's doing, and this is my optimist, I'm a huge optimist, Pastor Nate. This is my optimist coming out.
Let's hear it.
We live in a feminist-dominated culture and society where we have embraced the idea.
But now she's getting.
That's right. We have embraced the idea that marriage and family are bad. We've embraced the ideas largely from figures like Taylor that have said for years and years and years, right, there's only pain out there. There's only heartbreak, right? You might as well do it on your own. You don't really need a marital relationship, all of these things. Now she's embracing marriage and family. My hope actually is that in embracing marriage and family, she can discover that this is a good thing. And hopefully she can help turn some of these other young women who have largely neglected or abandoned the idea that that is a good thing for their life and lead them back towards this more Christian and conservative view that, hey, actually embracing family is God's design for me and that's a good thing and I don't need to go out and be a girl boss. No, she's not, but she's doing it,
I didn't
right?
think so.
She's doing it. And so hopefully that will change her perspective. And that's my hope, because anytime you have these large cultural figures, you never want to hang your hat on like, oh, they're going to lead so many people back into a good way. I don't know that I believe that. I didn't believe it when Kanye was like in his stint, right? But I was hopeful. I'm always hopeful.
I did like his Chick-fil-A song.
His You my Chick-fil-A? Yeah. I like that one. I listened to it. But, you
never lie that it was real, that the gospel came in.
Sure, but I'm hopeful. I was hopeful for him and I'm hopeful for them. And I'm hopeful that in our culture, we start to embrace the idea of marriage and family again, and seeing more and more major culture icons that go that direction would be a good thing for the country. And so I hope they have a lifetime.
Right. Get married, stay married, find Jesus.
Kids, that's what
next.
All right, next.
Who are we losing hope for here?
We're losing hope for Chip and Joanna. Yeah, Chip and Joanna are back. So we talked about them a few weeks ago on the show. They have now just re-engaged. They are the producers of another show where they are going to be hosting a family-friendly reality TV show that actually centers around LGBT figures, right? The show features a queer activist host, a cross-dressing judge, right, who's in women's clothes every episode, an all-LGBT skate team in this reality show. All of this was reported on, though they have not publicly commented on it yet. They basically got found out, I guess. And so they're the producers of this show. And this is another thing. Like, here's what happens when you depart from hard truth, loving truth, but the hard truth of Christian doctrine. Once you start walking away from God's way, you don't just stop, right? It's not like you stay planted here and you wander away. Wide is the path that leads to destruction, and many find it. Like, it's easy to get going on this road. And what I see here is they started in a place where they were famous and popular because of the Christian conservative worldview. That
what really makes me concerned, I mean, it's concerning for culture because so many people pay attention to them and they've obviously built an empire. I mean, in large part on the backs of evangelicals who supported them because they were Christians. I mean, Magnolia's okay. It's not all that.
Yeah, it's really overpriced.
But it was like, you felt like you were supporting good people when you go there. I mean, I felt that. Like, I've been there one time. Yeah, I was like
45 minutes.
Yeah, it's right up the street. I wouldn't hop on a plane to go there, but you're driving through Waco, you stop, whatever. But here's the problem. Like, they should talk to Jen Hatmaker about what happens in your life after you embrace it. Now, Jen's still not ready to talk about it. I saw yesterday a New York Times article about her and whatever, but then I had to pay, there's a paywall, and I ain't ever given New York Times a penny of money.
I'm not giving them any money.
So I didn't read the whole article. I read the first two.
The New York Times, a former newspaper.
But you could almost predict, like, I hope I'm wrong. I don't want to be right. But you could almost predict that at some point Chip and Joanna's marriage will probably blow up. And
I hope not.
It's not. I'm not saying that because of them, but here's why. When you start out as an influential Christian and God blesses you for, doing things his way, and you saw like Jen Hatmaker, she used to be, one of the premier voices to Christian women. And then her and her husband go and they planted a church in South Austin, and then they become an affirming church, and they're out there fighting everybody and trying to convince everybody they're right. And then next thing they're divorced. I think one of the reasons that you see that, and I've seen this with quite a few Christian leaders, they become affirming and then their own family blows up. It's because what you do is you kick the door wide open to the devil on your own family when you decide family, sexuality, the way that God has designed this stuff to work doesn't matter anymore. Now you basically told the enemy, come on in and wreak havoc on my life.
You invite the enemy into your life when you're not covering yourself with the scripture, and you're not covering.
So I'm not predicting nor wishing a divorce, but what I am saying is that you see this a lot with Christian people. That when they abandon that, all of a sudden that becomes a place for the enemy to come in and blow things up.
He says that those who hear my words and do what? Put them into practice are those who have their house built upon a rock. Once you don't have that foundation anymore, everything else starts to slide away. So I hope not, but I hope they return, and I really do. I really hope that.
I hope they do too. I kind of like them. I'm just like, what are you doing? You know, I'm not ready to cancel them or condemn them,
But I'm not going to Magnolia, right now. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's not where my dollar's going.
I don't like cancel culture, but I do like a good boycott. I think Pastor said that before too, but
I feel the same way. Like when Target had its whole thing. Do you remember?
Kind of worked.
Right? Target's boycott was a big one, and there were some really great large voices that helped lead that.
I made my wife really uncomfortable the first time.
Oh, me too.
Target one night, we were on a little double date with some friends of ours, who's actually Beth Allen, her husband, our ministry director in Liberty Hill. We walked in and I see all this stuff, and I immediately got out my phone and started making a video. They're like, "What are you doing? Stop it!" I'm like, "This is absurd,"
Yeah. I just told my wife when all that started, I said, "Sweetheart, we have little boys, and we're walking into a store where like the first displays are tuck swimsuits for trans." I said, "No, we're not going
child abuse.
We're
It's
not
ridiculous.
We're not doing that."
Well, for the Gaines, I mean, I think Isaiah 5:20 really comes to mind. Like, what are those who call evil good and good evil? You know, what sorrow waits for them? How can you? I mean, it's just that's where this is going, and we've got to be better. Christians, listen. Pastor Steve and I were talking about this on another episode, but you probably saw this, especially if you're on X. This is where I saw it, but. There's an account on X that did an investigation into the top 10 most influential churches in early American history that are still church today. And then are they still orthodox in their belief? Yeah. In other words, do they still affirm that God made man and woman in his image, that he made man for woman and woman for man? Do they still preach that Jesus is the way, the truth, the life, the only way to the Father is through him? Do they preach that stuff? And they went through to try to see, are these 10 churches still legitimate churches, and take one guess at how many of them are still orthodox in their beliefs and their doctrine.
Is it 0?
It would be 0. That's the number that we're looking for, 0. And so you see this happening all over the place, and this is why This is why when we actually believe biblical doctrine is true and we take a biblical stance, we start to look like extremists, because the actual extremists are becoming normalized. And that's the big problem I got with Chip and Joanna and anybody else like this, is you start to normalize that which God has said is not normal, which is not normative in the way that the Creator designed things to be. So that's really disappointing. I didn't even know that until I saw your show notes for today. I had to go look at it. I'm like, what? Like one wasn't enough? I know. Let's double down on stupid and start another show that's just as bad.
We'll see. Hopefully they come out and everyone, I don't know, hopefully they repent when they come out.
All right, we're trying to keep these Friday episodes a little short. We're on a little, but we gotta talk about Democrats on the run.
But they're home now, kind of.
They're home, and what do you know? Dustin Burrows and his buddies are doing nothing about it. Like, you can just up in the entire state legislature and then come on back. We'll give you your vice chairmanships. We'll let you start writing amendments and even consider them. Like, what the heck is going on down there in Austin?
So the Democrats are back, and they basically came back, and they also declared victory when they came back, which is so funny because it's so predictable, because everyone is like, yeah, they're going to come back and they're going to say, no.
Well, they are if they're not getting punished for what they did.
The reason that they're able to declare any victory at all is because they're just sitting in the House, right? Like going about their business. And here's what I'll say. I've got to give a couple of differentiations. Governor Abbott, he's done some great things this session. He literally said, I'm going to try and remove them. And then crickets, Dustin Burrows said, hey, there's going to be severe consequences. And then what did he do? He took away their like $300 a month paycheck that they get. And he actually didn't even take it away. He just says you have to come here to get it. Like, great. Okay, sure.
No direct deposit.
Yeah, whatever. Like, that's not...
That's so weak. Makes me sick.
And what he could have done is he very easily could have stripped all of them of these vice chairmanships that they had. He could have taken a lot
never should have given them to begin with.
That we shouldn't have given them to begin with. Why? I don't understand that. I don't know. But here's what I do know. The map passed. Right? So the map is passed, and it's going to be signed into law. And so federally, Texas will be gaining probably about 5 Republican seats for the 2026 primary. And
California has already taken steps to offset.
California is already trying to offset it. Now, California has some interesting hurdles that they're probably just going to bypass, in the same way that Democrats, when they don't like their presidential nominee, they just like swap them out. They're just like, forget the whole election. forget what the law says. We're just going to do what we want. That seems to be what Newsom is doing in California, but there's other states that are gearing up to counter that as well. So the good thing is that when it all shakes out, the Republicans are better positioned. If they want to go nuclear, if California wants to respond and say we're gonna take away the remaining 17 districts that Republicans have in the state of California. Then once you fight it all out between Indiana and Wisconsin and Texas and everybody else, you start to fight all of these battles. The Republican Party is going to come out on top in that one. And there are other states who are already saying, okay, yeah, Indiana's saying, yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll redistrict. If California is going to try and cancel out Texas's vote, look, there's a lot of,
and as we talked about a couple of weeks ago,
states that
we have a real nuclear house in Texas on the Senate side.
Yeah, and Utah, it came out with a map that they were talking about where it basically shrinks the Democrat districts like into Salt Lake, and it's like one Democrat district in Salt Lake. And I
Not
think
Las Vegas.
I think that's too much. No, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. All of those are very early stage, and so we'll see what happens with a lot of those. The counts are going to be good. We could get 5 from Indiana. We could get some other stuff. But I agree with you on the punishment for the people who ran away. Now,
it's just been such a perplexing legislative session this year because it started out like it's ending up with Dustin Burrows being a weak, feckless, spineless leader. My wife just got real uncomfortable. She's like, "Oh, why am I listening to this right now?" He is. He's
like, "No, my sweet Nathan."
He's totally. Oh, she knows better than that. But he's a weak leader. But and he's ending up that way. And yet, like, we have gotten some good legislation passed this time around. And one of the things that I was most excited about that I won't say I did some politicking, but I got a little involved going around talking to people down there at the Capitol and like, hey, man, come on, let's get this SB 10 passed, is putting the 10 Commandments back into schools. I'm excited about personally gone and dropped off posters at multiple schools in my areas to try to get them in there. So, you know, if you're down in Liberty Hill, Leander area, you start seeing those. It's probably because of me. You're welcome, or sorry, not sorry. However you feel about it. But one of the things I've noticed is that obviously there's a lot of litigation, not legislation, litigation coming up. And then this knucklehead judge, Fred Breyer, comes out and makes a ruling. And I'm just thinking, like, you know what it takes to pass a bill. And then they go through all the trouble to pass the bill. I went in and listened to some of those committee hearings, and they go through all the stuff that it takes. I mean, it's not easy to get a bill passed. Even a conservative bill in a allegedly conservative house, a bunch of fake conservatives in Texas. But they finally get it done. Greg Abbott does the right thing, signs it into law. And then, you know, before it even hits, we've already got lawsuits. And then
Abbott has been more conservative this session, because I think he read the tea leaves of the primaries last time around.
Well, he needs to be. Like, I mean, but Burrows should read the room too.
Yeah, so Burrows is weird, man.
Of course, Trump's endorsing him because he doesn't really know what's going on in Texas.
Yeah, well, Trump endorses him because Abbott asked, and I so wish he hadn't done this, for Trump to endorse anyone who helped pass SB 2, which was a school choice bill. That's Abbott's signature legislation. And so Abbott used his political influence to gain that. Okay, whatever.
Which still needs to be already revised.
Yeah, still. So there's a lot of things. We've had a more conservative session only largely because we flipped 12 House seats this past time around because of the impeachment stuff, because of the school choice stuff, because everyone was so fed up, in essence, with our Republican House being run by Democrats. Burrows makes a deal. He gets in there. You can all go listen back to Nate Schatzline's episode. It's great, where he talks about all this. Burrows is in there. He's playing his cards as conservatively as he needs to, but not as conservatively as he can or as he could. The Texas Senate, it should is the big one. The Texas Senate has all sorts of legislation that if the House were as conservative, we would be actually the most conservative state in the nation, instead of getting, Florida running some circles around us on a lot of these issues. But, that's how the House is. And by the way, this leads me to really the last thing I want to talk about with this is the next call. And our friend Nate Schatzline's also called for this publicly. He says, okay, well, you guys are going to run away. Let's redistrict the Texas House. Let's redistrict the Texas state legislature, which can happen. The governor can call for that for our own state. I think they should, because, the Supreme Court is largely, because these people are back. I know Attorney General Paxton, who's the one who tried to use every force that he could to prosecute and get them kicked out of their seats. They're going to rule it moot, which just means it's not relevant anymore because they're back. They're going to abstain from making a ruling. I don't read the future, but I'm telling you that's what's going to happen, because they're not super conservative either. And so they're going to basically say, well, the matter that's brought before the court is now moot, meaning, hey, we can't rule on it because they're not actually gone anymore. So he's fought as in every avenue he can there, but at the end of the day, if the Supreme Court says that, we have to take another action. I think the next action is, let's redistrict the Texas House. Let's get these guys out. Let's get Gene Wu out of there. Like, I don't know why we even have those districts here. I am excited to see Jasmine Crockett leave the congressional district. She's getting out districted, so that'll be fun. She's probably going to end up running for Senate because she won't have anything else to do. I hope that she wins the Democrat primary. It would just be the most fun option for the state.
I know we'd beat up Beto enough. So
We beat up Beto. Yeah,
Beto.
Beto's like in jail, almost going to jail. All this. Anyway, yeah. So I want to see Colin Allred and Jasmine Crockett fighting it out. I would tune in for that.
Yeah, Colin Allred. There's another person who claims to be a Christian and then wants to kill babies. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's all over the Democratic Party. It's pretty well.
Way to leave us on a depressing note, Pastor Nate.
Well, it is what it is. I mean, it is what it is. There's a lot of people out there, and again, the point of this podcast is to help you think biblically.
Yeah.
I talked about in an episode we recently filmed that you'll hear in the next coming weeks about personal discipleship. Like, the Lord hates those who shed innocent blood. And so you don't get to say, I'm a Christian.
That's right.
And then I want to use the laws of the land to make sure we can keep killing babies. You're a fake Christian.
No, it's 100%
if you
true.
do that. I don't care who you are, maybe support it.
There's legislation in the special session that needs to pass that comes to the protection of the rights of unborn. And if it doesn't pass,
we got to get the abortion pill out of there.
We got to get the abortion pill out of there. We've got to get some equal protection for the unborn, meaning that there's penalties if you are helping procure an abortion in some way. Those are things that we can do in the state of Texas that we just need courage to do. Here's what I would say. I actually want to frame this for our people before we close. When you're talking about politicians, I want everyone to remember a couple of things. One, they're not your pastor, they're not your priest, so they don't have to be perfect. But you know what they do need to do? They need to do the things that they said they were going to do.
Yeah, keep their word.
They got to keep their word. There's a lot of politicians who posture. This is really, Dustin Burrows. I don't know him personally. Maybe he's just confused. I don't know. But the truth is, he goes out and he says he's going to do things, and then he doesn't follow through on them. He doesn't do them.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. When you have a politician that comes out and they're proclaiming that they're going to push forward legislation that matters, legislation that saves the lives of unborn children, the innocent people. I mean, I was reading this morning in Chronicles, and God is holding against King Manasseh. He's like, hey, he's detestable because he's putting his own sons into the fire, meaning sacrificing his own children to Moloch. That's the same thing that happens in abortion. And you're sacrificing your own children because you think it will give you a better life.
Right.
We need courageous Christians who are willing to stand up on that issue. And here's what I'll say. If you have people who say, well, let me just explain why I couldn't vote for it this time because of this, that, no. You said you were going to go there and you were going to fight as hard as you could until we had rights for the unborn in the state of Texas. You need to fight for that. So when you look at politicians, just look at their record. Don't look at their posturing. Their speech might be great because, by the way, that's the other side of it. We have great reps who are saying all the right words and getting them. They're really hammering it, and they do nothing.
Yeah. Well, there's some great speech writers. I don't even know if they read it. They just say it.
And they get up and they say, "You'll never believe what's happening here." But then you look at their record and it's like, well, have they filed anything? Have they actually tried to advocate for this themselves? Or are they just posturing against other people? You want people who, even if they don't win, they can come back and they say, here's everything I did to fight, and it's real. It's not just talk. They can show you the receipts. You want people that are honest. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be your pastor, but you know what they need to be? They need to do what they said they were going to do, and they need to espouse our values. So if they espouse our values and they fight for them, even if they don't win, you can keep reelecting those people. You can't keep reelecting people that get up there and they say they're for us, and then it gets to session and they're against us.
Yep, I totally agree. I want to leave you with one more thing, and hey, let's get this in the show notes. There's a website called millionvoices.org where you can purchase 10 Commandment posters that are already made. It's very, very inexpensive. It'll cost you, less than $100 to outfit an entire school. And so let's get that link in there. I want to encourage some of you to put your money where your mouth is. Go out there and buy some posters and drop them off. All you got to do is call up to the school, ask how many classrooms do you have. Go up there, drop them off. They are obligated by law to put them up unless they're in litigation. There's something you can do about it. So we talk a lot about people who say things and don't do it, but let's not be those same people. So let's go do that. Let's make a difference. Let's capitalize on the moment that we have. And then we got to keep talking, and we got to keep fighting because there's so much craziness going on in our world. And again, part of our goal in this podcast is to help you think biblically. So we brought you today some things that some people care about more than others. We talked about a lot of absurd things, but the truth of the matter is we got to keep this stuff in front of us. I appreciate you bringing some of this up today, especially like the Gaines thing. I didn't even know about that. And it's just good to know. It's good to know where people are at and what's going on, so we can act accordingly and act responsibly according to the Word of God, how we live out our lives. So,
that's right.
Any final words, Pastor Daniel?
No, man, it's so good to be with you here, Pastor Nate. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today. Until next time, I'm Pastor Daniel, joined by Pastor Nathan Brown. This is the Under God Podcast.
See you next time.
Thank you for joining us today on the Under God Podcast. If this episode encouraged you, share it with a friend or family member. Your support helps us reach more people with God's Word. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and at undergodpodcast.com so that you never miss an episode. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, True Social, and TikTok for more content, behind-the-scenes moments, and faith-filled encouragement throughout the week. We want to hear from you. Leave a comment, join the conversation, and send us your questions. We will be answering them in upcoming Q&A episodes. Until next time, remember to think biblically about the things that matter most.